Look man, everybody likes a little home court advantage. What's the problem? We have the patron request from Astro. He says, I wanted to know what makes up a mage's workshop. Is it the same as a caster class's territory creation? By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your request. So we're gonna bounce over into El Malloy because this is one of the places where they give the most direct definition of a workshop. It tells us that a workshop is an alternate world made by a magus for the sake of honing their magecraft. No matter how powerful a magus you were, if you were to operate inside the workshop of another magus, the mysteries and the magecraft you could utilize would be severely limited. And this just goes back to what I was saying when I opened up. It's a pretty common thing to at least run into a workshop. We see them come up constantly in different series throughout the verse. This is most likely where a mage is going to be building up their foundation. So everything that they've worked on, things that their predecessors may have left behind, and even future plans for what they have ahead of time, you may find some type of documentation here for that as well. It's all gonna be here. So it's one of the most exclusive places for a mage, one that, as you would expect, they would really like to keep close to the chest. You don't want just anybody coming in here, and especially not your enemies, unless that was your intention and you have some type of a trap set up beforehand, which they often do. And the whole reason that this comes up is because Waver is the main character here. He's having a conversation with the mage Orlok, and they're discussing the workshop that they're in presently, which was Castle Odra. There's all different kinds of workshops, but when you get to some of the ones that's of the highest level, it can put you in some real immediate danger. And the one that they were in was designed to be of that stature. It was called Castle Odra because it was based on the fallen angel Odra Melech. The entire castle, the workshop itself, it was rooted in an angelic foundation. It was based around angels. So when you think about the typical workshop, let's say the Tosaka Mansion's workshop that surrounds their residence versus the one that you have here, it becomes a lot more nuanced because this workshop is actually themed. So it's bigger than just these casual bounded fields that you might find around the Tosaka Mansion or around the Emiya residence, to the point where if you don't take heed in this castle structure, there's parts of it that you can't even reach because the bounded fields that's in it won't allow you. Or even worse, the castle itself might just consume you and then you'll become a part of it. That's what happened to a lot of people here. A lot of mages ended up pulling up to the castle unknowingly, and they had their spirits consumed and became a part of the castle, further reinforcing it as a workshop. That's not something you see every day. It was fortunate for Waver that he has a good head on his shoulders and he has people like Gray and Luvia at his side with things that can work around it. Another thing that we know, which is something that comes from that same book, is that a workshop is something that's made after years, decades, generations worth of work. If a magic crest is like an artificial organ, then the workshop is like an artificial world. And it really speaks to the fact that it takes a long time to bring this together. Like the workshop that you find at the Emiya residence. Many people might believe that the actual workshop is the shed that Cheryl summoned Saber in, but the workshop itself is the entire land in general. That's why the bounded field works the way that it does and protects everything that's around it. And we've glossed over that too. As a matter of fact, you normally can't even create a workshop without letting the association know. The whole reason that Kurisugu was able to pull his off is because he cut ties with the association and they never found out that he was an actual mage. At least a mage that interacts with the public world. They always knew him as the Magus killer. And you might be thinking, how is that possible? He was literally in the war. Remember, he wasn't supposed to be there. The Ironsburns still participated. Irisville was still there. It's just that Kurisugu was doing all the work. So whatever happened with Kurisugu's father, whatever happened with Natalia, none of that fell on him. They might watch you, keep an eye on you, but they're not gonna outright pursue you until you're an actual threat. And Natalia, she did do good business with them. When she got that part of his crest, I'm sure she didn't outright tell them that it was for Kirisugu. They didn't actually realize until Kirisugu was already gone. And Shiro explains in the story, this is the same reason why they haven't come after him yet. Because if he's Kirisugu's son, he should be the next target in line. But as we've already saw, by the time the story starts, Shiro's talking to Rin and he doesn't even know what a workshop is really. And to be honest, if Shiro knew more than he did by the time the story did start, if he made any public pursuits, he probably would have been hunted down from the jump. The same way that he got taken in El Malloy. Because you know how the association is. They find out that you got a workshop, they're like, well, what you got going on in there? What you working on? Because whatever that is might threaten them trying to conceal it to the public, and that's always a no-go for them. One thing that usually goes unspoken about is that these workshops have a heart, they have a core, or at least where most of the energy will be kept in mind. In the case of the Emiya residence, that of course would be the shed. One of the conversations that Rin has with Shiro is that she's surprised that Kirisugu even bothered to make a workshop out of the household just based off of the way it was built. And what she gets into is how the house is so spacious. You know, mages, when they go for a workshop, the ideal thing to do is to find an area that's more compact so the energy is easier to channel. You know, the Emiya household, they have the Japanese style, so it's a lot of open rooms, they have open doors, long hallways, it's wide, as opposed to the Tosaka mansion, which is the Western style house. Everything is more boxed in. And then you have the heart of their workshop being all the way down in the basement. That's something that differs entirely from the way that the Emiyas had their heart set up. But again, Kirisugu wasn't a methodical mage to begin with, so it's only natural that the core of his workshop wouldn't be where it should normally. The reason the Tosakas have theirs in the basement is because mages usually want to have them either higher, like Prelati, her workshop, it's a workshop that's all the way in the stratosphere on an aircraft. It's that high up. Another place they opt for is below the ground, the way that Sion made the Neo Chaldea. The idea here is that the higher you are to the heavens, you can channel energy from there, or the lower you are to the earth, you can channel a greater energy from the ley line itself, the closer you are to it. I mean, just off the top of my head, just think of the way that the spiritual tomb of Albion works under the clock tower. That's some of the greatest energy that you can find, Age of Gods level. Look where it is. And then you have territory creation. Now, territory creation is different from workshops in the sense that it's something that's specifically designed for servants. You're able to come up with your own domain, one that's completely for that servant and their master. And not just any servant either. Even with the skill territory creation, you still have to be a certain caliber of a mage to create the bigger ones. You don't just automatically get it, and that's why you don't always see somebody having it despite being a mage or despite being powerful in their own vein. Medea, for example, she had one. You guys may have noticed it in passing. I put it in my video as footage plenty of times, but you can actually see the barrier that surrounds the territory that goes around Ryodo Temple. The entirety of Ryodo Temple was her territory creation. Her skill was at an A rank because again, she's a mage from the Age of the Gods. As far as workshops for a servant, you can have workshops inside of a territory, but not the other way around. So Medea had her workshop in the confines of Ryodo Temple. And just like a mage, it's made to bolster their situation, making mystic codes, gathering information, or taking mana the same way that Medea was doing through the story. And that's why she became a big problem. That prep time is serious. And then the core for her was the actual main building itself. So the same way you got the core for the regular mage, you get inside Ryodo Temple and then you got the main building where she houses her core. But you would have to get past her in order to even get there. So that's a big deal in and of itself. A lot of the size goes into what rank you are. So as an A rank, she can make a better territory than somebody would say B. The type of territory you can create is completely dependent on who you are as a mage. So it may be something that complements you. Shakespeare, for example, he only has a C rank in this skill, so he can't make an entire territory like Medea, but he can create a study that benefits him and furthers him as a character. And we actually see him there quite a few times where you can actively watch him write the story of Apocrypha. That's what he was doing throughout the war. Like I said in her Don't Sleep, Medea was a real deal threat. She had enough mana to control every servant in the war if she wanted to. If they became independent and the story wasn't focused around Shiro, she could have really got busy. I will say that as Kirisugu's successor, it would have been nice to see Shiro further his father's research into his workshop, even though it wasn't necessary because Shiro wasn't supposed to be a combatant at the time. I wish the story was sculpted in a way where it was necessary. Maybe a post-time skip version of Shiro where he does decide to build upon these things and make his own theme version of the Emiya workshop. Maybe something that even complements the nature of Kirisugu himself and the way that he was as a mercenary.